Hello, hello, welcome. Rabbi Charna, you are.
So welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for returning, and greetings to Miriam. She said she'll watch this recording later. I guess what they're going to do, for some reason, after the class, they'll be putting this up on YouTube. And so, for example, it's Mark, right?
Yes, I'm typing it in right now.
Yeah, that you will be able to see the rest of it later. So before I go into any kind of new material, my first question is to you, any questions from last week? Did anybody do any look at any kind of text to see if you could play with your new toy? Well, tell me about it, Stephen.
I just try to decipher the Hebrew, to kind of separate it out from the root, the prefix, the suffix.
Yeah, what did you look at to do so?
What did I look at? Oh God, I have to think about it. It's upstairs.
Okay, don't think, hon. Don't think. It's thinking is optional tonight. I'll try and do the heavy thinking.
You have a tear. I did that one.
Okay. So we'll go in, and I just realized that I have a sentence, and I made a mistake by not using. Okay, we'll fix it. We'll fix it. We'll fix it. So, anybody else? Was it fun, Steve?
Yeah. I like doing it.
Okay, good. Glad to hear. Anybody else give it a spin around the old noggin? Okay. Well, we'll do some practicing tonight. And maybe we'll just kind of dive into, I have an example. I was going to take a sentence from my favorite parsha. Why not? And, but first I want to say there are some principles. There are some principles that we can look at. There's general guidelines for finding a root. And I can send this to everybody, or I could have them put this in the YouTube. But some of the prefix letters you'll see in a word, and we'll have some examples soon, like aleph, nun, shin, or tav. These are various prefix letters. And so if you have trouble finding a root, sometimes it's because these prefix letters need to be dropped. Sometimes the hey as well. And this is especially with words that begin with these letters. And so sometimes if you have trouble finding a root, these are one of the letters that have to be dropped. Also, sometimes you have a doubled letter of a three-letter root, and you can replace it with either, that can be replaced with a vav or a yud. So here, if the root is aleph, sadi, if you see that, you can check this as being the root. So sometimes the middle letter will get doubled. I know this is confusing, but if you're having trouble, these are just some hints you could have. So I think printing this out is really, going to help you get really into it. So 2 or 5 letter roots are typically found under their basic 3-letter root. So a word like this, this would be its root, or this is just simply the ohev. So I'm going to give this to you. They just wanted to let you know. You can see frequently a root with either a yud or vav in the middle can be found with a hey at the end. For example, here with the yud in the middle, this is actually the root. So I know this is very confusing until you actually get in it, but I want you guys to have this as a general guideline. And this is just a reminder that this book, the Etymological Dictionary of Biblical Hebrew, this is the one book we used. This is another book, The Word, by Isaac Moserson. This is another one. We talked last week about the Klein is a great etymological dictionary. But I'm going to show you something amazing in a moment that can be used I'm going to teach you all how to use Safaria. And so what I want to go over today is one of the things we're going to do is first we're going to look at this one sentence from Ki Tisa. And I tried to prepare everything and I just remembered, oh my God, I forgot one word. So we'll do that together. And I'll show you how, when you actually break down on this sentence we're going to look at, a sentence that you've all looked at 100 times, well, maybe 20, I don't know how many, and you've gone, okay, let's just get on to the meat of it. But there's more information when you stop and look at the word root. So I want to show you that. And we're really going to go deeply into that. And I'm going to show you a Kabbalistic trick with words. And then I want to spend the bulk of the class going into Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch. Like this etymological dictionary is based on his work. But I actually was able to, I want to show you how going inside the roots completely help us understand the Hebrew story. And we're going to do it through the story of Cain and Abel. And I'll tell you why I picked Cain and Abel momentarily. So that's where we're going tonight. How does that sound, y'all?
Good.
Okay. So let's start with, let me start with that, which I've already prepped. And we're going to look here at this word. This is the beginning of the Parsha, Ki Tisa. Now, Ki Tisa is an extraordinary Parsha. You know, you got your census. You got your Moses going up to the Sinai. You got your golden calf. You got your God and Moses going back and forth. I hate them. I hate them. Let's kill them. And you got your 13 attributes of mercy, which we just spent a lot of time talking about. So it's a very powerful Parsha. And it begins with this. We're not going to talk about this, Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe Lemor. This is something that we usually skip over quickly, but Valerie will tell you. Is Valerie still here? Hold on. There she is. Okay, sorry. You know, we've spent a lot of time unpacking this. There's actually more information in that I want to get into right now, but I'll just tell you, what is this word daber and lemor? Why does it have to say he spoke saying? What's the purpose of having two different word roots, which you barely get in English? But I think I'll use this to show you the trick. So raise your hand if you're very familiar with how to use Safaria. Cool. Okay, so this is, Safaria is like mamish, just the most extraordinary technology. So let's say I want to know more about this word. And so I'm just going to go to Vaydaber and then click on it. And look what happens. As soon as I click on it, all these resources come up on the right. It'll tell me more about this text. It'll give me, look at all the different translations I can find, how I can search, and it'll give me commentary. It'll tell me things, various commentaries, if the Talmud references it, if it's in the Midrash, if there's any halakha based on that. And so let's go into a commentary. I press the commentary. And the first thing I see is Rashi has something to say. Okay, before we go any further there, I'm just treating you all as biblical scholars. And if that irritates you, direct message me in the chat, okay? Or tell me, I can take it. Why is Rashi so important? Why does everybody have to say, Rashi says? Why do we care what a guy like almost 1,000 years ago, 900 years ago says? Anybody have an understanding or a guess? Go ahead, Steve. Pesky mute button.
When you study a page of Talmud, Rashi's at the center.
Good. Why put Rashi at the center? What makes him so special?
He's brilliant.
Okay, I'm not going to disagree, but there's many brilliant people. So I'm going to tell you on one foot why Rashi is so important. Okay, and I'm going to tell you something that is 7th grade tested. If when I with the 7th graders, I will, or with the kids, I'll say this represents 4,000 years of Jewish history, and it starts with it starts here. Hold on. Ba-dum-bum. It starts here. We'll call that 2000. And please, I never was very good at penmanship. Here's 2000 BCE, 1000 BCE, Common Era, 1000 Common Era, and then 2000. You get the picture, right? So what I'm trying to say is we can look at Jewish history as a 4,000 year endeavor. These 1,000 years is about Torah. These 1,000 years is about the temple period. These 1,000 years, and believe me, this is a broad generalization, but we're just trying to get a picture. These 1,000 years are about the Talmud. And then these 1,000 years are about what I call modern commentary. Okay. So here's what I want to say. We have the Tanakh, and the Tanakh is going to take us. The Tanakh kind of starts with before, the creation of the world. Abraham comes in right around here, 1850, and Tanakh takes us all the way through right around here, right around, it stops before, it's really, there's not too much in Tanakh past 440 Common Era. And then you've got the Mishnah and the Talmud who comes in from there. And most of the Midrash comes into this area. Right around here is where we have, let's pick a fun color. Right around here is where we have Rashi, okay? So here's what Rashi did. And by the way, like Maimonides comes after Rashi. Most of the modern commentators come after Rashi. What Rashi did is he went through, now there was no printing press yet. Remember that. It's very important. And there were not as many scholars such as yourself in that time. So Rashi, what he did is he read everything that had been written up until then, and he summarized it within his comments. So one of the reasons we're so happy to have Rashi's commentary is because Rashi is kind of the guy that said, here, let me tell you all that other stuff. And then he becomes the foundational voice of modern commentary. Is that helpful to understand? So you'll always see Rashi pop up. What did Rashi say? Because he's the foundation for modern commentary as we know it. So see what historians you're becoming? Any questions about that?
So you could say he wasn't reacting to anyone else's commentary. He was just doing his own from original sources.
Yeah.
Everybody else started reacting to him.
And we do. Yeah, that's very good. I will accept that. And let's remember that I am not a historian myself, but that is my understanding. So we go to Rashi, and Rashi, he doesn't even talk about Vita Bear. He's like going to go, he's not. Oh yeah. Oh no, that's what I wanted to show you. So he's not. We'll go into his commentary later. So we go here, and there's not going to be really any commentary on that. Nobody's going to commentate on that. So the first time you get the commentary, but if you press it again, if you press it again, please don't make me a liar. There we go. Look what you get pop up in Safaria. We have now, it'll tell you the verb daber, which means to speak, declare, converse, command, promise, warn, threaten, sing. It'll tell you the different conjugations or the binyan, how in the kal it means one thing, the nifal another, the piel another, the pual another, etc. So there are 7 different binyanim, building blocks of conjugation, if you will, and it'll tell you what it means there, and it'll tell you the source for that. Look at then it'll, if you want the BDB, which drives us all crazy, it'll tell you that. So you can actually use this as a translator. You can actually use it for both commentary. So here we have commentary. When we get to Ki Tisa, you'll get your commentaries, and then you'll see what Rashi has to say about Ki Tisa. But if you're like, you know what, I don't really want to know what Rashi says about this, but I really want to know what this word means. Because when you what? When you take Ki Tisa et Rosh, what it is saying here is that Ki Tisa means when you take, hold on, let's annotate. That Ki Tisa et Rosh means when you take a census. And so usually we look at this, when you take a census of the Israelite men according to their army enrollment, each shall pay the Yud He Vav He principle, a ransom from himself of being enrolled, that no plague would become upon them through being enrolled. I don't love that translation, by the way. One of the things that, hold on, that I might do, I just so hope this is interesting. If it's not, you've got to tell me, is I might say, wait a second, can I get a different translation here? I get a different translation. Let us take a look and see if I can. Oh, The 5 Books of Moses by Everett Fox, one of the best translations out there. Everett Fox has all he wants to do, he's not Jewish, he's a scholar. He wants to translate it from the point of view of like its poetic truth. Well, let's see what happens when we get his translation here. All right, but he's not translating this. All right, well, I'm not going to be able to show you my cool little trick, am I? I don't want him.
There it is.
Yeah, open. Okay. So here how he's going to translate it, okay? And we can see the difference between these two. When you take up the head count of the children of Israel, it doesn't have men in here. In counting them, they are to give each man, because I think it does say man there, yes, each man a ransom for his life for God when they count them, that there be no plague about them when they count them. This is a much more honest translation. So we like that one. So let's see. Did I lose it? Ki Tisa, where did it go? There. So we're going to say, okay, so the one thing we're going to say here is that Tisa is going to be part of what it means. Tisa is a word, but what is the word root there? Is tav. So let's say I looked it up in this book, in Hirsch. I won't find it as a word root. So I'm like, oh, it's one of those where a letter drops out. Spoiler alert, the tav is the letter that drops. Okay, the tav is the letter that drops, but I can cheat here because what I'm going to do here is I'm going to press it twice and look at, oh, the tav drops. It's actually a nun. That is the first letter of this root. Nun, sin, aleph. This word is one of the most complex words. We could spend the next half hour, and I have. And Valerie, you have with me. We've studied, it's taken us, we could spend 40 minutes going over all the meanings of this particular word. But we're not going to. But the one thing we're going to say is that it means to lift, to bear up, to carry, to take. To bury, carry, support, sustain, endure. To forgive, to be exalted, to lift up, to be carried, to be taken away, to exalt, assist, to desire, to carry, bear continuously, to cause one to bear, to cause to bring. All of a sudden, when you take a census from Kitisa at Rosh, you go, ew, that is not a very poetic way to translate this word. And so by going on the inside of what this word root means, okay, I don't know if somebody tried to give me, oh, goody gumdrops. Thank you. Thank you, person who direct messaged me. So now we have to go, how do you really look at that word? There's something more going in here than taking a census. And so we have to understand that there's an energy inside this word that if we really study it, it'll help us understand what's really going on. I will say again that if you kitisa at Rosh, I really would love to switch my overall. I've tried so many times to switch this to keep it with as Fox, and I just haven't been able to figure that out yet. But we have a sense that what are you lifting up? You're lifting up at Rosh. At Rosh. What does Rosh mean, you all?
It's head. But why
Head,
isn't it
summit?
why isn't it hey harosh, low of head?
Well, because it's not a you mean, oh, because you have a direct object.
Right.
Oh man, I love your question. I told you I wasn't a grammatician, so I'll do the best I can. But it is not the head. It's not specifically the head, but it's something that's at the beginning, or it's something, I don't know. Sometimes when I get really poetic, I want to translate this when you lift up the consciousness. Sometimes I want to look at it because it's by not being a ha in there, that direct object in this particular way has got to mean something else. Hey, by the way, before I take your question, Steve, let's see if Rashi has anything to say about that. It's not of lifting up. The sense is when you wish to obtain the sum total of their number to know how many they are, do not take their census by their polls, but give each of them a half shekel, and you should count them to ascertain their number. All right. There's a whole commentary on this, and this isn't a commentary class. I wish it was, because I love commentary. But what they're saying here is this is the first time we understand you don't directly count. You've all heard you're not supposed to directly count people. You're not supposed to go 1, 2, 3. We do. But King David did one time and created a plague for everybody. And so it's this sense of like you're kind of like you're carrying something, you're lifting something, but it's not. You're not supposed to look at their individual head. You're supposed to use a half shekel to count them. it's a very complicated commentary, but I can't answer why that et is in there. It's a very, very good question. I wish I had a better answer. Steve.
Well, when you take a word, let's say kitisa, I don't know what building it's in or what binyan it's in. Does it carry sub rosa all the other meanings somehow implied within it?
Not exactly. And hold on, let's get exactly the tense. By the way, because I've warned you that my Hebrew is limited, but I don't let that bother me. I have a lot of sources at my disposal.
So I just looked up et, which
wait 1
says-
second. I just want to
Okay.
show you this. This is the Old Testament parsing guide. And I can look up every single word in here and it will immediately tell me the tense, the binyan, everything like that. So let's look this up, and then Mark, I want to hear what you have to say. And so tisa is going to be, it is kal, imperfect. So imperfect means it's continually happening, that it is, something that's kind of, we would call it future, but Bible doesn't have the future, but it's continually happening. It's second masculine singular, out of the kal. So it's like there's something happening here, which we'll talk about in just a second. I'm sorry I cut you off, Mark.
Oh, no problem. So I just looked this up in the Wiktionary. The preposition et is used to change objects to the accusative case. An accusative is a direct object.
Right. So what here? So this is why this was exactly Peter's question. Peter's question is, since it's a direct objects usually are followed by hey, the. And he was saying, where was the in there since it's a direct object?
I understand that.
Yeah. And it's an excellent question. I mean, it has a mystical significance, by the way. Often the Zohar says when you see the Aleph Tav, especially without that grammatical element, that it's a reference to the presence of the Shekhinah. That it can be used as a euphemism for the feminine face of God. And so there's something about that this 8 rosh, when you lift up the head, the consciousness, I don't know, something about B'nai Yisrael. When you lift this up, but it's a valid translation.
But what's the hyphen like thing? I don't know what that is. And does that change it
it's
to
telling
make
you
it?
it's telling you it's a smichut form. And so now I have to go to another reference book. Like I said, I don't know a lot. Oh, you know what I know? I know how to buy good books. That's what I'm really, really good at. So we'll see, but I apologize to you for not being able to answer these exceptional questions. Let's just see if I can find it in one other
I'm just
place.
wondering if it changes the meaning or the use of the et.
Yeah, it's but it is, when you have that little dash in there, it is a smichut form. So hold on just 1 second. 30, 12.
It would be a bad translation to say, when you count the heads of the Israelis. That would be.
But here's something to understand. I'm looking in the Tikkun right now. Allison, I'll get back to you in a second. When I'm looking in the Tikkun right now, that dash is not there. So it's not in the actual Torah scroll. It's just in the Masoretic text. So I think that's important. Let's see, 30:12. So I'm looking at my very fancy schmancy Tikkun. We've got a copy of this on the Bima. Grammatically speaking, a subject and its verb should agree in number. Either both should be plural or both should be singular. But in our verse, the verb, but not, that's differently. So they're looking forward. They don't address this here either. So good question. When I studied Ki Tisa this year, I swear I will be looking into that. What did you say, Allison?
Oh, I just thought it's the saying, okay, count heads, like maybe that's where it came from. You're sort of like, instead of lifting them up, or you're just counting heads, like counting the men.
Right. Or maybe there's something else in here, because we're going to get to this. Ki tisa et rosh. So when you lift up or carry, the heads, somehow. And notice eight rosh. Rosh is there's something, it's singular. So B'nai Yisrael, now we know it's seen singularly. Now we're going to see something very interesting. We're going to see this word root, Pei Kuf Daled, Pei Kuf Daled, Pei Kuf Daled, 3 times in this sentence. And each time it's being translated in a different way. So we're going to look at, what I want us to look at is there's 3 different verbs here that I think are very interesting to look at. This one is here too. And then the last verb we have here is this. And I don't think I think this one too. No, that's not a verb. That's not a verb. That's not a verb. Forgive me. So these, here's a verb. That's a verb. Is this right here. Okay. Is right there. But the ones I really want to concentrate on is I want us to look at Kaf, Pei, Resh, and Pei, Kuf, Dalet, in order to really get to what is being said here. And I want to say something else about it, something that we hold in mind when we do commentaries. This is the first word of a parsha is important. And this parsha, come on, you guys, you got your golden calf, the lowest point of the lows, and you got your 13 attributes, the highest point of the high within this single parsha. So we have to say there's something here that's very important for us to look at. And so what's going to happen when we now I'm going to something else. So here's that bad translation that I don't like here. So the first thing we want to do is say what's going on with Pei Kuf Daled. Now I sent you something about Pei Kuf Daled, so you realize that already. I told you last week, I think it's one of my favorite words. It's so important because look what's here deep, like Gesenius, who's has another great dictionary, easily found online. So it's like to visit, to inspect, explore, inspect, to go to anyone to look after them, to be, so there's something about being in relationship here. To cause anyone to look after another person. So you have a sense that within this word, you have a sense of, I love this word, accountability. Now, accountability has the word count in it. Accountability is keeping track of something. Hirsch says the word means invest with purpose or responsibility. And so if we look at it just from that point of view, one could say that there's an investiture of purpose. When you lift up B'nai Yisrael and you're actually going to count them, when you're actually going to count them and you're lifting them up, to do that count, what is being lifted up? Here it says, according to their enrollment, according to their what if it means according to their capacity to suddenly become accountable? Because you're giving each man a kaper nafsho. Nafsho is his soul, his personhood, okay, his nefesh. So each man is you're giving an accountability of some sort for his soul. What does the kaper have to do with that? All right, we better look at that word, kaper. And this is different from the root that means to smear with pitch, which we just saw in Noach. It means to make an atonement, make reconciliation, to purge, ransom, gift, atonement. Hirsch says to cover or protect, forgive or pardon, to ransom. And so one could say, oh, and I have this line here. Where did I put it? Okay. When they are accounted for. Oh, yeah. Because this is we're about to get to a very poetic translation. It's a drash. It's not a pashat. And ransomed is his soul to the ineffable name. He is freed from capture. And each man has his soul ransomed to God. So we have when you are lifted up and held to accountability, your soul, you're given this opportunity for your soul to be ransomed to God. Piv code otem, ransom for himself, because this pakod principle is somehow bringing a sense of accountability to this soul. And you have to do this in a very certain way so that this is my interpretation. My interpretation is that if I say, pay attention to me, God, pay attention to me, God, pay attention to me, God, then I now am accountable for my actions. And if I do something yucky poo, I have to then suffer the consequences. If I say I am here to serve you, God, and I'm here to serve you in love and kindness, and then I go around spitting on people's shoes because I don't like the color plaid they're wearing, that's a stupid example, I know, then I'm now accountable to God. And so there's something within this fact that, so here's my translation, my very poetic translation of this word is, when the consciousness of Israel is lifted up, an investiture of purpose is given to each man, and ransomed is his soul to the ineffable name when they are accounted for. He will be freed from capture, freed from kind of misery. And there will be among them a striking down when they're measured. Valerie.
So the context of this census is for military service. Is that correct?
Yes, the context, but it is for military service is the context. But, you know, this is a parsha in which they become accountable for their actions with the golden calf. And so we have
to. But I think the people going into it are already looking at life and death.
Yes. Very good point. Yeah, very good point. When we, this goes back to Carlos Castaneda. I don't know if any of you remember him, but he used to say, death consistently hovers over your left shoulder. And the wise person holds their death close in order to have accountability in their life. You could say that there's a similarity between those concepts. All right. Interesting. This is what happens when you begin to go deeper inside. You go, wow, there's a lot more going on. Even if how Rabbi Charna has just translated that as wacko, and I'm not going to go there. And that's a fair assessment. I hope this invites you to understand that Pei Kuf Dalid showing up again and again, because then you would do a hermeneutic approach. If we were doing commentary, you would say, where else has this word shown up? And we talked about that last week. It showed up when Sarah was pakaded. It was the code. Oh, it has the word code right in there. Pakad. Okay, anyway. That was the code laid down by Joseph for his bones. And that was God, when God took note, pakaded Israel, and kind of fulfilled that code, that's when the whole Exodus began. So there's something in there when it shows up, that there's some kind of noticing and accountability built into that word. That's the power of looking up a shoresh. We look at nun, sin, aleph differently. It's not just obtaining a census. It's not just taking a census. There's something else happening to the souls being lifted up and noticed, and an accountability that happens when that occurs. Comments or questions before we move on? Before we dive into the Hirsch piece, which is just, I don't know how much of it we're going to get through. I want to show you a Kabbalistic trick that one of my teachers taught me. And that is this, that if you really want to understand a word, and we're going to look at, we talked last week a little bit about bless. So I'm going to talk about this word. That you could take the Beit Resh Kaf, which, power growth, spur prosperity, bless, bow, kneel, pull. We talked about that a lot last week. But what Samuel Avital, who taught me, who is the most profound Kabbalist I have met, quirky, brilliant, true Kabbalist. And he says, if you really want to understand a word root, you not only look at it from its order, but you do these permutations: Beit Resh Kaf, Beit Kaf Resh, Resh Kaf Beit, Resh Beit Kaf. Oh, sorry, that should be sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, get your Hebrew straight, girl. Kaf Resh Veit, Kash Veit Resh. That if you really want to understand a word, what you do is look at all of its permutations. Now, not every word has all the permutations. So, for example, here is a 4-letter word root, but the 3-letter root of it is Kaf Pei Resh. In this one, only 2 of the words can be permutated. But this is one of those words that has all of them. If you really want to understand a word, you put it through, from a mystical point of view, you put it through all its permutations, and then come to understand exactly how that word is dancing to create a full holographic understanding of it. So I'm going to keep this up. We're going to have about 30 seconds of silence, and tell me if anybody can create a story based on all of these meanings. By the way, the word kerovim comes out of this. And by the way, your poetic word doesn't have to be good. Anyone want to give it a try? I certainly hope my poet's going to give it a try.
Resh Vav Kaf is very hard.
All right, so you know what? I give you permission to forget about it.
Okay, the firstborn brought the first fruits with a bow and blessing, kneeling before the pool, embracing the power of growth. Placed the fruits aside and mounted the carriage, arriving at the vehicle for God's presence.
Hey, you just created a poem. I might
What
say,
can I say? It's my job.
it's your job. I know they should double your pay. So I might say to truly and fully understand blessing and how we create blessing in our life, we have to have the capacity to truly understand the initial force within something so that we can pull it out, so that we can cook it up. Not too much, but to have that capacity to do that so that then we can carry it from one place to another, that blessing, in order to have that sense of angelic presence in our life. Yes, my friends, that's abundance. I'm not saying it's just a way to fully flush out that each and every word root has a variety of ways to look at it, and that the Hebrew letters themselves are very powerful. And that studying can just really, for me, I don't need no stinking psilocybin. I study Torah. It just like kind of lifts me and allows my mind to expand into possibilities. That's the power embedded here. So,
Chana, given that one can take a shoresh and it allows you to reframe its meaning in multiple ways, and reframe, which in turn reframes the essence of what the Torah is saying, to just look at it in different ways. How does that connect to, I mean, that seems to be somewhat antithetical to having some truth, some emet, something that's solid, as opposed to something that's, I mean, I love the fact of being able to do that reframing. It makes you look at things in ways that you've never dreamed possible. And yet it's a little bit troubling because there's nothing solid there.
Well, welcome to truth with a capital Aleph. In other words, if we believe that creation is unfolding, then there has to be the capacity built in for that unfolding, for that continued revelation, that each generation can bring meaning to something that's evolutionary. And that is embedded within our tradition. So how do you find ground in something that's continually moving? And think about Abraham from that point of view. I mean, this is the week we study Abraham, right? Here's a guy that said, leave your land, leave your family's habits, leave your ancestral, and you're going to be sent someplace and you don't know where it is. The ambiguity built into his journey, that's truth. Think think of your children, y'all, or your grandchildren. They have no idea what the world is like. It is so filled with ambiguity right now. So what are the truths? And everything is trying to shake up what truth is in this day and age. How do you find truth in a moving situation? And so this conundrum that you're speaking of is as profound a question as you could be asking based on what we're learning here. And wrestling with that question is essential. What's foundational is God is one. What's foundational, we're in God's image. But what's ever changing is the world's causes and conditions that has us continually have to adapt. And if we didn't have that capacity for adaptation and looking at something anew, there'd be no unfolding civilization. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So that question, by the way, the word nun sin aleph that we just looked at, that means to carry,
Mm-hmm.
be burdened, and then lift up, which is a priestly instruction, also is the same word root for marriage, which is kind of something you carry. It's a burden. It's something you have to lift up. And it's also the same for paradox. So anytime you have to like, oh my God, this is such a burden. How am I going to lift it up? You have to be able to have that capacity for a paradoxical view. So my tagline, you know, if we did Real Housewives of Boulder, I don't really watch that show, but I know they all have taglines. Mine would be Torah. I love to study Torah. And Torah reveals herself according to the faces peering into her. She reveals herself according to those who are looking at her, and something happens when you study that lifts people's hearts up. Valerie, does that make sense?
I got a poem for that. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Torah. This is the owner's manual to our place in the world, to our place in history, lessons learned and relearned, each year in each era by every tribe lost and found, glowing imaginal threads, stories of not forgotten ancestors, questioned, retold, challenged, unraveled, rewoven in each era, expansive truth, alive beyond the cobwebs, sheltering futures we strive to dream.
Beautiful. So the power of your question, Peter, is that if we were studying Torah regularly, I would want you to push every time with that question to say, what's the foundational truth here, and what's the capacity for unfolding? And if you go back and forth between those two places, that's where your truth will emerge and your wisdom will show itself. Yeah. All right, let's see what we can do here, what we have time for. And so how many pages do I have here? Yeah, quite. See, this is like just a few sentences. It's amazing what he's done here. So I'm not going to do all of this. I'd love to send this to you guys as well. I think this is so great because it's and Vaha Adam Yada et Chava Ishto, and the earthling, the Adam, knew et Chava. Look at there's a direct object too with no there's the eight. So the eight is kind of used as a the here, without the need for the hey. But he knew, yet he knew, nudge nudge, wink wink, his wife. And so one of the things he's going to go into here is the original concept of ownership. I'm not going to study that with you right now, but he really looks at how, these word roots and how they're defined from each other. And he really goes into it here, but I'm not going to do that right now. Because we don't have the time, but she conceived v'tahar, she conceived taled at, Cain, and then she said, kaniti, I have acquired a man with God. I have acquired a man with God. Now, this word here, acquired, is the same that if you had the kinyan, when the man says to her, "I have acquired you for me." I don't know if Valerie, do you remember saying that?
Nope.
Beth, do you remember saying that?
No.
Peter, Steve, Mark, you're all married. Allison, did you? But you did, because that's just part of the ceremony. All right, so let's see. So Cain. So where are we going to go with what he says? I want to go into Cain, because that's why we have to look at it, because this word for Cain, she names him Cain because it comes out of this word for acquiring. So there's a connection here. So she says here for kuf yud nun is derived from kuf vav nun, property. So it's saying Cain would have been born from the dismissal from paradise, and in the ecstasy of her joy, the mother calls him Cain, what she herself had achieved, acquired by herself. When the second son was born, the world already stared at the parents, full of worries, in which a child can be an additional burden. Eve's heart was heavy when she called her son Hevel, transitoriness. Think about that. At first, she's like, look what I did. I acquired this. Okay, I did it with God. But look what I did. And there was that sense of Cain as this acquiring thing. But Hevel, it's already like going, wow, things are different on this side of the garden. Everything is transitory. And we could do, and in fact, we did that in Torah study. We did a deep study of this word, Hey Vav Lamed, because every name has so much meaning. So we could already see these names have built into them materiality and something more transitory, something more vaporous. Can you see that? Based on these two word roots? Nod, sneeze, shake your fist, something. So, Allison, you don't quite see it? Unmute, please.
It's okay. You can go on.
No, I don't like going on when somebody doesn't get it.
No, I didn't say I didn't get it. It's just, I'm good.
Okay. So it says here, like back in the beginning, the original conception of ownership rests on production. Man's primary capital is his strength. Hence, kuf nun hey, in its first meaning, is not acquisition by money, but by strength, power, energy. Thus, God is the owner of heaven and earth because he created them. So kuf nun hey is the stalk or stipe which produced the blossom and seed box. So here, with God's assistance and cooperation, I've acquired a male human being by the expenditure of my strength. So the first enthusiasm of the first mother was a raised feeling of self-importance. And the question can arise in our minds whether this feeling does not already show some clouding of the pure conception of motherhood. Fascinating. A mother standing on the pure height of consciousness of duty would have thought more of God and of the new duties and tasks which come with this gift of God rather than proudly of her own merit. And so a clouding of the point of view and a disclosure of egotism and vanity, which very easily may have affected the tendency of the character of the son, on whose very name she imprinted the stamp of this self-esteem. Because as we said, kuf yud nun is derived from kuf vav nun, property. So I guess you could sum that up. If it's not one thing, it's the mother. Sorry. But there's something about seated in his name was a sense of property or materialism. So I hope that makes a little bit more sense now. And then, you know, there's all these stuff he does about Hevel, but let's kind of move on. So Cain, it may be remarkable that here it speaks first of Abel, though Cain was the firstborn. Okay. And bare Cain, and she said, I have acquired a man. Okay. So, so here we mean the contrast. Okay, so they're talking about what Cain did. His occupation was the more natural one, more self-understood. We're not told more about the brothers than this contrast of occupation. The contrast of agricultural and pastoral peoples, which sure enough can be seen in the beginning in this first pair of brothers, who separated from each other just in this difference of their occupation. Agriculture calls for the expenditure of all one's bodily strength and energies. The verdict in the sweat of thy countenance is quite specifically and literally carried out in the agricultural labor. He becomes totally absorbed in his profession of gaining a scanty subsistence for his bodily required. And what we find of pride of possession and pride of one's own accomplishment in the conception of Kut Nun, Kuf Nun Hey is most predominantly to the fore in the occupation of agriculture. So honestly, and she bore again his brother Abel, and he became a shepherd. I mean, honestly, 3 sentences, it goes on and on and on and on, you know, just to get to the first 7 sentences. My point being that the deeper look into the word roots of this name gives a lot more information of these first 2 brothers, Cain and Abel. It suddenly becomes this battle between materiality and spirituality. And what is the direction in which brother's going to go? And what are the tendencies that occur in our behavior when we clamp down on that materiality, what we have, what we acquire, what we do? And suddenly we can come up with a whole slew of deep lessons. Comments, questions? Interpretive dances, irritations, jokes. Bye, Mark. So let's impact of what I shared. Something. Give the teacher something so she knows people are engaged. Steve, I'm going to pick on you. How's this landing?
My first response is, oh no, don't pick on me.
All right.
No, I'm trying to digest it, and it's very new, and I loved your exposition of that sentence before. I thought it was just terrific.
Yeah. So there's you know, there's so many ways to look at this. So let's just take trying to remember I wanna look at something, so I wanna trick you a little bit. Here, wait, here it is. I wanna look up this one sentence. And just, all we have to do is just play with it of finding the shorashim.
I'd say one thing, I won't ever look at Pocate different in a new, as I did before, particularly in that visiting of Sarah at the tent.
Right, and we're gonna,
Yeah,
that's
and I
it.
wonder why, I wonder why in the Imahot, they included that word too. It's in, Pocate Sarah.
Yes.
Yeah.
See, great. So, I'm going to warn you all that for better or worse, I'm doing the Devar Torah.
It's interesting that this is an aside. In the Reform, they do Ezra to Sarah, the help of Sarah, rather than the Pocate, and I've always been curious about that.
You mean in the Amidah?
Yeah, right, in the Amidah, correct. Yeah.
And by the way, crazily, I'm one of the few people that don't like to add the Imahot.
Are you going to tell us why?
Yeah, I'll tell you why. Because maybe I'm influenced by Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. What did he say was the secret to the universe?
42.
Right. How many words are in the Avot without the Imahot?
Well, I'm guessing there must be 42.
How many words are in the V'ahavta? How many words are in Anabakoach, one of the most powerful players in the Hebrew liturgy? 42. So for me, I like to say the Avot without them, mainly because I really, I want to have that sense of that within the 42, there's some kind of powerful strength that's important to honor. And I figure back then, a man was nothing without his woman. That they acted as in a deep, deep partnership. So that's just for me. I know that's quirky. I'm not saying anybody else should think that way, but we all have our little spiritual quirks, don't we? So let's just randomly, I don't even know where this is going to pop up. Let's see if we can try and figure out some word roots, okay? So, Ani Adonai Elohechem. Is there any verbs there? Any word roots there?
No.
Asher Hotseti. What is the
Yotzai?
Yeah, so great. So you were able to look here and you were able to see that that's a prefix that gives you kind of the tense, if you will, that is the suffix, which gives you the personhood, and then that this is Yud Sadi Aleph becomes the word root. Very good, Peter. If you didn't get it, hopefully so you could see here in this 3-letter word root, the yud dropped out when it was put into that configuration. Okay, is everybody following that? Then etchem, me'eretz. So any other word verses here?
Latate.
Good. Not Peter, because Peter, you're onto this. You've been doing your work. Anybody want to guess what the word root is, latate? Oh, I just gave it to you. Now, how dare a word root only have one letter of its 3-letter shoresh? How can it do that to us? I will tell you it's binyan in a second, 2538. 2538. Nun tav nun. It's a cow. It's a cow. But yep, it comes from Natan. So there you go. That's how tricky these can be sometimes.
You know,
So
just to get a comment here, the thing that strikes me, well, one of the things is that these letters go in and out of words. It's like they have a life of their own, and there must be some mystical significance to it. There just has to be.
yeah. Well, yes. I mean, if we got into the meaning of the letters, we could go there because the Lamed, Samuel Avital's nickname for the Lamed is the elegant lady of light. And what she's doing, I love the Lamed so much. This is the only letter that naturally goes above the line, right? So what she's done, and by the way, some would say that it's made up of a Vav and a Chaf. Vav has a gematria of 6, a Kaf has a gematria of 20. And so hidden within the Lamed is actually the gematria of 26, which is the same of Yud He Vav He. I mean, that's something you might want to recognize. But you might also say that she pulls down from above and brings it down to create a container into the world. And then seals it. The Tav creates a seal for it so that that's how you give. You are being given something through this effort of bringing it from above to below and then creating a seal for it upon the earthly plane. I mean, if you wanted to go all mystical, you might do it that way.
What about the nun?
The nun?
Right.
Oh, the nun. Beth, you should consider taking my Hebrew letters class in January because we will go through each and every letter of its deeper significance.
Well, I'm just looking at the shoresh and trying to think about how that might be different than that's just the infinitive.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
well,
This is good. So you to be able to find that was very good. All right. What's the next verb here?
Hayet.
Well, no, li'yot.
That's right. Which comes from haya, to be. So here's another tricky one because only 2 out of the 3 word root letters are in there. So I think we're going to kind of come in for a landing here. Maybe we'll just take one more sentence. Let's take one that's not too difficult. Listen, here's something we can do, but I'm afraid we'd have to get political talking about the ger. Let's these are tough ones to do.
Well, let's take the risk of talking about the ger and just look at.
All right. There. Okay. So here we go. V'ha'aretz lo timacher litzmitut. By the way, I hope you all really have gotten a good handle on how to use Sefaria. Sefaria is the most amazing tool. All right, so we'll take this sentence. What's the first verb we have here?
Timacher.
Good. Exactly. And that it's nice when they're actually easy to find. Mem kaf resh, to sell. What's the next one?
Well, it looks like it leads me to it, but
It's a noun.
it's a noun, okay. But toshev is a verb in the second line.
Hmm.
The toshavim.
Very good. So, so I think you have some tools now to start to look at that. The Hirsch book, this etymological dictionary, it's like it's one of my best friends from it. I used to study with some really great Hebrew speakers, and I would pull out my Hirsch, and they would groan in misery because they were all academics, and Hirsch can be very interpretive. So know that it is, and you just got a taste of his interpretive style. But the Klein book is a valid etymological dictionary that is academically solid. So, my friends, this concludes our two-part look into shorashim. I think you've got a kind of a lot of information tossed at you. I mean, the whole point for me is to invite you into really honoring the brilliance of this language. It's an ancient language that came out of, sounds, pictures, and then created the Hebrew letters that we have today are not the first Hebrew letters. They're the second iteration of Hebrew letters. They evolved into what they are now. And I think we understand that they're powerful unto themselves. They have energy, they have meaning, they have understanding, and they dance with each other to create these words that have both a solidity and a flexibility at the same time. They're like the moon. They're static and dynamic. And that interplay of that oscillation that occurs, this is what propels all of life forward. So I hope you are enticed to look at the language in a new way and to keep asking questions. On Saturday, that's what I'm going to talk about in the Devar. I'm going to talk about the art of the question. And yeah, because that's really the gift of possibility. So any concluding comments or concluding questions?
Thank you.
This has been nice.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I thank you all for your kind attention.